Conversations on Reference. This is your weekly podcast on libraries and librarianship. I'm your host, Simon Aristeguieta. This week, I would like to talk and to give my opinions on the reference transaction. But for this week, we're going to focus on the reference interview. If we read the literature, there are some steps that we have to go through to make sure that our interview, the reference interview, is a success. If we go to the textbooks and other sources, you have to greet the user or the patron. You have to understand the information needs. You have to gather detailed information. You have to confirm that you have understood what the information needs of the patrons is or are. And of course, you have to provide assistance looking for information, and you have to look for those sources. Okay. Once you find sources, it would be a good idea also to assess the relevant sources that you're going to provide to your patron, to the user. Then it is very important that we go over and we make sure that the sources that we provided are addressing the information needs of the patron. Okay, I think it's also important to follow up later by email, maybe by text, or if the user will go back to the library to see if that the sources that you provided were useful in addressing the user's information needs. Okay. And also it will be fine, and I think some libraries do that, if the library has a survey that the user can answer or complete after the transaction is done, to see how satisfied, and also to have, if the user has some observations on how to improve the reference service in the library. And if you follow the library policies, maybe you will have to record and document the interaction. In my opinion, in order to really understand what the information needs of the user or the patrons are, the reference interview is the most important element in the whole reference transaction. From the beginning, from the greeting till the end, when you do a follow-up or you do a satisfaction survey. So what I have seen in the field, working with reference librarians and working with my students, is that sometimes the information needs are not well understood. And sometimes we as patrons do not understand what kind of information we're looking for. So we as librarians have to take a lot of time, or more time, I guess, to understand what that information needs are. What is the purpose of the information needs? Because that will make a difference. Who is the audience? What do they need information for, et cetera, et cetera. So there are many elements that we have to explore in order to help our patron in the best way possible. One of the things that I have done in the past when I did a reference interview, as I mentioned before, I work as an academic librarian, and I did a lot of reference interview to researchers. Was to clarify many to clarify the needs of what the type of information they were looking for, and how that information was to be used. In the case of researchers, of course, most of the information that they were looking for was to do like a lead review for a research that they were going to carry out, or they were thinking to carry out. So I knew from the get-go that I have to go to peer-reviewed journal sources, okay? I have to go to academic databases and do my search there. But that's because the context was giving me those clues. Now, if you're in a public library, you don't have that context, because your patron may be a researcher, maybe a little kid, maybe a middle-aged man. whoever. You don't know who they are. So asking questions about how is the information going to be used, not because you are interested in censoring the information, or it is because it will provide you with the clues. It will provide you with the steps to look for sources. Okay, so knowing the context of where the information is going to be used for, knowing the audience, who's that information for, what are you going to use the information, how are you going to use the information, etc., etc. That will provide you with more clues on how to search information. It's not enough of what sometimes we see in libraries, that librarians, reference librarians, will do a Google search. That's not enough, because anybody can do a Google search. We have to get the best sources available possible. If we have to go to a specialized database, then we should go. If we have to talk to other librarians, then that's a way to go. If we have to even call other branches of our library system or other libraries, please do so. Try to find an expert on the field of where on the domain of the questions. Okay, that helps a lot too. Another important thing, and when we do a reference transaction, and I think sometimes it's not mentioned in textbooks and other sources, is we as librarians have two major things to do. Not only to provide information, but we have to provide the best information possible available. So we have to learn to assess information, electronic information, printed information, any kind of information, because it is our responsibility as professionals to provide the best service possible to our patrons. Also, first thing, assessing, and also is provide instruction to our patrons. Teach them how to do their own searches, okay? Teach them how to use the technology. Teach them how to use databases or specialized reference materials. Teach them how to properly design a query to reach the results that will address their information needs. We have to instruct and teach our patrons to do their own searches. Of course, that doesn't mean that we are not going to help them. We always have to be ready to help our patrons. But it is our responsibility too that they learn to search properly. So in order to do that, of course, we have to know how to search properly. Okay? We probably will need to learn to use control vocabulary, a thesaurus. We have to know what the reference materials are. Nowadays, of course, we mostly use electronic information or online information, but still, what sources are we going to consult? Are we going to still be using Google for any question? Yeah, that may be, of course, possible. That may be the first approach to addressing the information needs of our patron, but that cannot be the end point. We have to go a little bit further. And so it is important then that 3 points. First, to understand information needs very well. Then you assess the information that we are providing. Assess the validity, the reliability, the authority of that information. And thirdly, to teach our patrons how to use information. So these steps, together with the steps that I mentioned at the beginning that are mentioned in almost every textbook, is how we get to do always a positive transaction. And also, it is important that we know our limitations. We cannot know everything. We cannot even know where the sources are. So if we know our limitations and we want to provide the best service possible, don't hesitate to call a colleague in your library or outside your library in other libraries who you know are experts on the field or the discipline or the domain that can help the patron in a better way than you can. Okay, we are not doing reference to sensor information. When I talk about assessing, it's not about sensory. At the end, the patron will have all the rights to select information that they're looking for. What I'm talking about is that we have to provide the best information possible in our hands. We are professionals, and we have to distinguish ourselves in providing the best service possible. So after you all do all that and you have taught the patron or the user how to search for his own or her own information, make sure you ask also for the email or contact information so you are able to contact them later to provide you feedback, and to also for a follow-up interview to see if they need more information, and to make sure that the information that you provided really has served them to address the information needs. I have always said this in my courses and whoever I talk to. In my opinion, the reference function of librarianship, it's the main function, and I repeat the same word, is the main activity that we do as librarians. To me, that's at the core of librarianship, being able to help other people to access information and access information sources. We don't have to be, it is impossible because knowledge is so vast. So we don't have to know it all, but we have to know our sources. The way they do it in academic libraries is that there are subject specialists, okay? In public libraries, we don't have that because information, the required information comes from every discipline, every domain, every situation, etc. So we cannot have, especially in a smaller systems, we cannot have specialized libraries or subject librarians. So, and in some very small libraries and rural libraries, the reference librarian may be also the director of the library and also have to do circulation and many other things. So I know it's a tough job, but we are the face of the library. And we are there to take care of our users, patrons, clients, from early childhood to very elderly users. So please make sure that you offer an excellent service to all your patrons, and make sure you understand the information needs so you can help address them. Make sure you assess the information. Make sure you show, instruct, and educate the user on how to do search and how to use the reference sources. And finally, make sure that you do follow-up. You do a follow-up to the interview. You can use email. You can use text. You can do a phone call to your user and your patron to make sure that the sources that you provide were enough to address the user's information needs. I think that is vital. And that, of course, will be the end of the reference transaction. That will be a very positive reference transaction. In my opinion, there should never be a negative reference transaction. There always should be a positive outcome. Because even though we may not be experts or we may not have the sources, there are other library branches or libraries that do have the expert and that do have the sources. So we can always tell the user that, and we can make an appointment for the user to have a remote reference interview or reference transaction, or we can invite the user to visit the other library, the other branch, to have that consultation with the librarian and to be able to address the information needs. Okay, so we always have to make our reference transaction a positive one, and that takes, of course, effort. That takes a lot of professionalism. We have to be very professional in our as librarians, as professional librarians. Okay, so I just wanted to touch in a few elements that I think are also important that may or may not be discussed in textbooks and in reference courses and classes. And because we have to do that effort, we have to become a proactive and active and proactive elements of society. We have to be there to answer the questions that our users have, and we have to provide the best service possible. There's no other way around. Okay, thank you so much for listening to Conversations on Reference. I hope to see you next week. And again, my name is Simon Aristeguieta.